Well, it's no secret that crime, homelessness, and lawlessness has gripped many Democrat-run American cities, leaving once great metropolises looking like war zones or sets from apocalyptic zombie movies. Right now, Chicago is in the headlines after local youths went on a rampage, looting stores, vandalizing streets, and beating up anyone who happened to get in their way. Joining me now to discuss this is political commentator and Media Research Center TV contributing writer Stephanie Hamill. Stephanie, let's get right down to it. Today it's Chicago we're talking about, but you know what? I could show vision of cities right across the U.S. that have descended into apocalyptic hellscapes, and they all have one thing in common. Democrat mayors. What is it, Stephanie, about Democrat policies that seem to encourage this sort of destruction?
You're so right. I mean, it's not just Chicago. You see it in New York City. You see it in San Francisco, in Portland, and so many other areas that are run by Democrats. And this isn't a new thing. This has been going on for quite some time. And it just goes to show that the Democratic policies are failing. Now, of course, this is a multi-layer complex issue. It's not just one thing. It's so many things that contribute to what we saw happen over the weekend with the teenagers taking over the city. Number one, it's a sign of the moral decline that we have in this country. Bad parenting. It leads directly to the policies that we have from these Democratic officials who continue to handcuff police officers, who suggest that we need to focus more on social issues. But and I'm not even against them focusing on social programs, right? I mean, that's good. But if you are handcuffing your officers and preventing them from doing the work that they need to do, and then you make it so that criminals get a slap on the wrist and end up back on the streets, you're going to still have the same old problems. So, you know, this is just such a much bigger issue than we can squeeze into a small segment. But it is really devastating to see what these teenagers did over the weekend. And you hear some of these politicians saying, oh, it's because of poverty. Well, you know what? There's some 3 billion people in the world who live in poverty, over 1 billion people who live in extreme poverty, and they don't resort to this type of crime. They don't steal your sneakers. They don't steal your iPhones. They don't rob the clothes off of your body.
And you know, Stephanie, very well said. But one of the things we also hear from the progressive left is that this sort of looting is a victimless crime. You know, they're just stealing stuff from big corporations. We heard this during 2020. But there's a real human cost in the neighborhoods where this happens. Have a look at this.
Everything is either on the floor. Look at this. Babies need milk. Can't even get nothing for my kids, bro. I feel like an animal, and black people made me feel like an animal. Y'all did this to us.
I mean, Stephanie, this is horrendous stuff. You know, real people are victims of this, and yet why do these Democrats keep winning? In Chicago, a progressive Democrat just won after Lori Lightfoot stepped down.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought this up. I mean, what happened over the weekend in Chicago with the teens, there were actual victims who were physically assaulted, punched in the face. There were teenagers shot. And so that's, you know, the physical and violent aspect of it. But when we have people trying to downplay robberies and the looting and the crime happening in the cities that isn't necessarily physically violent, they're completely out of touch. The emotional scars that are left behind and the impacts that it has on community should not be overlooked. I was a victim of a robbery in Washington, D.C. when I lived there. And it was a teenage group. Some 10 guys came and surrounded me, ripped my iPhone out of my hand. It was one of the most terrifying experiences I've ever had. And I still have the emotional scars from that to this day. Now I don't trust anyone when I go outside. I'm always constantly looking over my shoulders. And that's one of the reasons why I left Washington, D.C., because they don't care about enforcing the rule of law there. I live in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho now. They do take crime seriously here. Our police officers aren't handcuffed from doing their job. And think about this, too. We didn't even get into this. In these Democrat-ran cities, they want you to be, they want to completely disarm you. Think about it. Chicago has some of the strictest gun laws in the country. So does Washington, D.C. So you are a walking duck in these cities. You know, and the criminals know this, which is why they target you. And in my case, in the robbery, nobody was held accountable. Nothing happened to them.
And, as I said, Stephanie, at the start of this, it's not just Chicago, it's cities right across the country. In the progressive utopia of Portland, Oregon, they tried to open a Shake Shack burger joint. Now, don't tell New York Mayor Eric Adams, who's all about, turning the place vegan, but someone smashed the windows before they could even cut the ribbon. Stephanie, what will happen to the downtowns of great American cities if you lose all the businesses?
Yeah, well, the people who can afford to move and relocate their families, they will. This is going to impact the middle class and lower economic families in these cities. And we've already seen some of the consequences lately in the past couple of weeks with business and corporations like Walmart announcing that they're leaving some of these cities. For example, in Chicago, they're losing 4 Walmarts. And in San Francisco, they just shut down Whole Foods there because of the crime. We can't have this lawlessness in this society. And it's just so unfortunate that people don't take it seriously. And back to Chicago, we did hear from the mayor-elect, Brandon Johnson. We also heard the outgoing mayor, Lori Lightfoot, try to downplay what happened there. They said, oh, it wasn't mayhem. Oh, it's unfair to demonize and ridicule these teenagers. Well, if you are committing these crimes, you should be held accountable no matter what your age is. And so teenagers are smart. They know the loopholes. They are getting away with this because they know that they can. So if you're going to act like this, you need to face up and deal with the consequences.
And Stephanie, you said it very well, because also, remember, the mayors of these places, they have security details. Ordinary people don't. Stephanie Hamill, thank you so much for joining us.